Meghan Markle, who is to marry Prince Harry, is a feminist. Yes, just what the world needed, another feminist in high places. The media here in Britain went haywire this week on the announcement of Prince Harry's engagement to Meghan Markle. Now, I may support the monarchy in principle, but I'm always astonished at what sycophancy it can arouse in people. For the most obsequious royal coverage, I advise the BBC's royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell. One is reminded of George Galloway praising Saddam Hussein. It's just unadulterated slime. The first thing to remember is that the public interest angle regarding this marriage is fairly thin. Prince Harry is actually fifth in line to the throne these days. By the time of his marriage in May next year, he is likely to be sixth in line. So this engagement has pretty much no constitutional relevance whatsoever. But the media pretends it does, so that one may go on and on about a royal wedding. So, following the British media, we were told how modern, how refreshingly American Meghan Markle is, and what a breath of fresh air she was going to be for the monarchy. Reference was made to her mixed race, and immediately it was pointed out that some coverage in the past had been racist. This does not bode well. Why highlight any such former supposed abuse, granting it yet more oxygen? Moreover, only vague allusions were made. No concrete examples were given of who in the press was supposed to have strayed and what the actual headlines were supposed to have been, leaving one to wonder whether this alleged victimization ever happened. It was clear all the press had been extensively briefed by the palace. Was one playing the victim card here with this talk about racism? Who knows? It sure sounded like it. But then came the not-so-gentle hints that Meghan Markle was a feminist. Opinions were expressed that the lady surely would not wish to sacrifice such campaigning zeal once married to Prince Harry. We were shown clips of her talking about feminism. So here she is, talking feminism with Larry King.
Is feminism still a good... I'm a feminist. I've been a feminist all my life.
That's fantastic.
Is it still a good word?
Yes, it's not the F word.
I don't hear about it. I don't hear it said much as it used to be.
Well, I think it's really, it had
Gloria Steinem in her prime.
Of course. I mean, I think that it's really shifted because at the onset it was getting a bad rap and seemed to be like women burning their bras, and this perception of how it's evolved since then has changed. And last year I think it was sort of a of the moment kind of word that people were trying to define a bit more and to embrace it again in a different way, to not have some sort of negative connotation with it. I don't think there's anything negative about being a feminist. It's very important to shift this idea that, you know, one would say, okay, you're coming on to Larry King, and you're doing politicking, so maybe wear a blazer and play the opposite and make sure you can be taken seriously. My point in all of this is that no matter what you look like, you should be taken seriously, and I think it's very important. And for me also, I think it's really great to be able to be a feminist and be feminine, to embrace both.
If there is anything here that makes an impression, it is the lack of heft. Much like Emma Watson of Harry Potter fame, you feel here is someone who wants to talk about feminism, but doesn't really have much to say about it. So one spouts platitudes and vagaries. Next up, here she is on some feminist panel, complaining about skimpily clad scenes.
For the show, for example, this season, every script seemed to begin with, Rachel enters wearing a towel. And I said, nope, not doing it anymore. Not doing it. And I called the creator. I was like, it's just gratuitous. We get it. You've already seen it once. So I think at a certain point, you feel empowered enough to just say no, right? And I think it's a challenging thing to do if you don't know your worth and your value, but for women to speak up. Look, as an auditioning actress years ago, you're so hungry for work, of course you're willing to do things like that. So I think a lot of these women who are in the music videos, that's still exciting for them. What we need to shift in their minds is that they have higher value than that, and they don't need to be doing that, you know? So I think for me, speaking up and being able to say, I'm not going to do that anymore, has been a big shift for me personally, but it starts with that.
A towel. She won't appear in a towel. Not a nude scene. No, a towel scene. This is the age of the movie trope of male film stars taking off their shirts in films. The trope has various names. one being the shirtless Jackman scene, with obvious reference to Hugh Jackman. These days, if filmmakers want a sexy scene, it's more often than not the male lead who'll take off his top. Why? Because audience research has revealed that women like it and men do not really care. Whereas if the female lead strips off, the men like it, but many women claim to feel uncomfortable. So female nude scenes barely exist anymore in the cinema. On television, where Meghan Markle works, they barely ever existed. But Miss Markle's objection here was not to nudity, but to appearing wrapped in a towel. And this is being revealed on a feminist panel. Apparently this is a matter of feminism. What is her actual point? That under feminism, women in TV dramas ought to be fully dressed at all times? Again, one cannot help but feel that this is a little lightweight for a United Nations advocate for women. But let's move on.
And it also starts with the men, across the board, everything that we're talking about, a lot of the decision makers here are the men. You need the men to stand up and empower women. I was in New York a few weeks ago at the UN, and we were talking about this group of male CEOs in Australia who have made a pact now and said whenever they're invited to speak at a conference, they will not attend unless 4 female CEOs are also invited to come and speak, because their voice is just as valuable. But it's like, without those men taking that initiative, isn't that incredible?
Ah yes, those virtuous male CEOs who won't attend a conference unless female CEOs are invited also. And look at them all applaud. There is only one problem with this scene, is there not? If the described gender diversity is such a good idea, why are there 6 women sitting on stage here? Where are the men? Are these women by any chance applauding the very opposite of what they themselves represent?
You need men to try to affect that change, because at the end of the day, I think what scares people is this idea of female empowerment is somehow threatening. No, it's not. You empower the women, you're empowering the community.
Female empowerment. Yes, am I the only person who is already having doubts as to how well this royal thing is going to work? Why does the name Sarah Ferguson spring to mind, I wonder? But let's talk about her UN work. This is how her brief UN Women's Advocate trailer ends.
We're working to create a world where women lead.
Yes, women lead. Indeed. By marrying royal princes, apparently. On a completely unrelated note, how is hypergamy spelt again? Mere curiosity, I assure you. But let us have a look at her UN speech, shall we?
Well, good evening. That doesn't feel like enough, does it? It's just great evening. Maybe that's better. UN Secretary General, Executive Director Phumzile, thank you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am tremendously honored to be UN Women's Advocate for political participation and leadership. I am proud to be a woman and a feminist.
UN Women's Advocate for Political Participation and Leadership. I will simply ask this rhetorical question. To be said advocate, whom or what has this woman in fact ever led?
And this evening, I am extremely proud to stand before you on this significant day, which serves as a reminder to all of us of how far we've come, but also amid celebration, a reminder of the road ahead. I want to tell you a story that'll sort of give context to my being here and my work with UN Women. When I was just 11 years old, I unknowingly and somehow accidentally became a female advocate. It was around the same time as the Beijing conference, so a little over 20 years ago, where in my hometown of Los Angeles, a pivotal moment reshaped my notion of what is possible. See, I had been in school watching a TV show in elementary school, and this commercial came on with the tagline for this dishwashing liquid, and the tagline said, "Women all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans." 2 boys from my class said, "Yeah, that's where women belong, in the kitchen."
Frankly, I do not believe that. For one, it's a strange school you attended where you were watching commercial TV. But that aside, I just don't think 11-year-old boys are pontificating about female roles during washing up liquid commercials. This seems way too contrived to be true. I'm sure it fits your narrative and it makes a convenient opener to a speech. But unless 11-year-olds in your school were engaged in all-out gender warfare during commercial breaks, during those lessons which for some bizarre reason featured the viewing of television programs, then it seems to be entirely made up.
I remember feeling shocked and angry and also just feeling so hurt. It just wasn't right and something needed to be done. So I went home and I told my dad what had happened. And he encouraged me to write letters. So I did, to the most powerful people I could think of.
So there you have it. A campaigner was born during a washing up liquid commercial.
Now, my 11-year-old self worked out that if I really wanted someone to hear me, well, then I should write a letter to the First Lady. So off I went, scribbling away to our First Lady at the time, Hillary Clinton.
Oh dear. I fear you've just lost a considerable part of your potential audience.
I also put pen to paper and I wrote a letter to my news source at the time, Linda Ellerby, who hosted a kids' news program, and then to powerhouse attorney Gloria Allred, because even at 11, I wanted to cover all my bases. Finally, I wrote to the soap manufacturer. And a few weeks went by, and to my surprise, I received letters of encouragement from Hillary Clinton, from Linda Ellerby, and from Gloria Allred. It was amazing. The kids' news show, they sent a camera crew to my home to cover the story. And it was roughly a month later when the soap manufacturer, Procter & Gamble, changed the commercial for their Ivory Clear dishwashing liquid. They changed it from "Women all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans" to "People all over America." It was at that moment that I realized the magnitude of my actions. At the age of 11, I had created my small level of impact by standing up for equality.
Yes, dear, a company decided to change one word in its washing up liquid commercial because corporations seek to take the path of least resistance. And if a sufficient number of people complain about a petty thing, the company will sooner change it than tell its customers that they are being silly. The overwhelming majority of purchases of their washing up liquid will have been conducted by women. That's what their market research will have told them. Hence their use of the word women. But that doesn't really matter, does it? The words to that commercial needed to be changed because you wanted it. Just as the words to Star Trek's famous opener, "To boldly go where no man has gone before," had to be changed to "where no one has gone before." Never mind the split infinitive. What needed changing was the word man. But then that is leadership. Changing the wording of washing up liquid commercials and science fiction openers.
Now, equality means that President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, whose country I recently visited as part of my learning mission with UN Women.
What exactly is a learning mission? Oh, and by the way, since the UN paid for that junket, did you fly their economy class?
It means that he is equal to the little girl at the Gihimbe refugee camp who is dreaming about being president one day. Equality means that UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is equal to the young intern at the UN who is dreaming about shaking his hand. It means that a wife is equal to her husband, a sister to her brother. Not better, not worse. They are equal.
Are you beginning to see yet what I mean when I say that there is not really a lot there in terms of intellectual basis? One is an actress, and this feminism thing proved a good career move, but don't expect one really to know that much about it.
UN Women, as you guys know, has defined the year 2030 as the expiration date for gender inequality.
An expiration date for gender equality, as defined by UN Women. An expiration date? Can this get any more highbrow, I wonder? Is there anyone on this planet who believes that feminists will ever conclude that gender inequality no longer exists? Would that ever serve their interest? More to the point, let us for a moment consider gender inequalities in countries like India, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Iran, just to name a few. Could one possibly hope to get those countries to adopt standards for the treatment of women comparable to Western standards in the next 13 years? And please remember that the horrible discriminatory washing up liquid advertisement was on American television. If feminism cannot accept that there is gender equality in countries like the United States of America and the United Kingdom, then surely the UN expiration date in 13 years' time would require them to move the status of women in Iran not only to a level of that in the West, but beyond it. I can but ask, are we expected to take this seriously? Any of it?
And here's what's staggering. The studies show that at the current rate, the elimination of gender inequality won't be possible until 2095. That's another 80 years from now. And when it comes to women's political participation and leadership, the percentage of female parliamentarians globally has only increased by 11% since 1995. 11%? In 20 years? Come on. This has to change.
Well, I'm persuaded. Are you?
Women make up more than half of the world's population and potential. So it is neither just nor practical for their voices, for our voices, to go unheard at the highest levels of decision making. The way that we change that, in my opinion, is to mobilize girls and women to see their value as leaders and to support them in these efforts. To have leaders, such as President Kagame of Rwanda, continue to be a role model of a country which has a parliamentary system comprised of 64% female leaders. I mean, it's the highest of any government in the world, and it's unbelievable.
64% females in Parliament is a good thing? How so? So 64% females is good, 64% males is bad. Does this make sense to anyone?
We need more men like that, just as we need more men like my father, who championed my 11-year-old self to stand up for what is right. In doing this, we remind girls that their small voices are in fact not small at all, and that they can affect change. In doing this, we remind women that their involvement matters, that they need to become active in their communities, in their local governments, as well as in the highest parliamentary positions. It is just imperative. Women need a seat at the table. They need an invitation to be seated there. And in some cases, where this isn't available, well, then you know what? Then they need to create their own table.
It's hardly the Gettysburg Address, is it? We were just told how women are more than 50% of the population. That means they make up over 50% of the electorate in democracies. So the people in Parliament are whom they elect. For were they to insist on electing only women, given that they form the majority, it would happen. So if the electoral majority, that is women, do not vote women into office, why is that a problem? Women have still made their choice. Surely that is what counts in a democracy. As long as nobody is preventing women from electing other women, as long as nobody is preventing women from standing for office, then there is no problem. This rhetoric regarding democracy is especially interesting, given that it comes from someone who now seeks to live a life of status and leadership by marriage to a member of an unelected royal household.
We need a global understanding that we cannot implement change effectively without women's political participation. It is said that girls with dreams become women with vision. May we empower each other to carry out such vision, because it isn't enough to simply talk about equality. One must believe in it, and it isn't enough to simply believe in it. One must work at it. Let us work at it together, starting now. Thank you so much.
One cannot help but conclude that Meghan Markle, much like Emma Watson, has been selected by the UN to speak on women's issues, not for her having any great insight on the matter, but simply for her celebrity, and, what delicious irony for a feminist, for her looks. Who knows, perhaps it's therefore all right to show a lot of skin when representing the UN, Miss Markle. That might explain the amount of décolletage on show. I mean, one is almost revealing as much as though one were wrapped in a towel. So yes, feminism meets the royal household is going to be quite the occasion. We await to see what this red carpet version of Anita Sarkeesian will bring to the monarchy. But apparently it is going to be terribly modern and refreshing. Personally, I hope that the monarchy's traditional approach will win out, and that the newcomer to the royal firm will simply be told to zip it. Royals are not supposed to be political campaigners. They must take care to avoid clashing with elected politicians. Their role is ceremonial. If Markle is permitted to continue with her feminist leadership mission, then no doubt our progressive friends are going to regard that as a great boon. To have a vociferous advocate for feminism lodged among British royalty would provide that cause with considerable media attention. Imagine the upsurge in media interest toward any feminist conferences this member of the royal household might attend. So maybe this explains to those of you who think I might have taken leave of my senses dedicating time to thoughts about a royal wedding just why I think this story is worth following. Should Meghan Markle continue with her feminist mission now that she will be wed to a prince, she could become very annoying indeed. That is all from the Cyberpass for now. Thank you very much, and goodbye.